Hello and welcome to the second tier. I'm Ryan Dilks and I'm joined by Justin Peach because today we are reacting to some breaking news. Scott Parker is leaving Fulham as their manager. Now, this hasn't officially been confirmed yet. It's come from a very reliable source, that being John Percy from The Telegraph. He says it's going to be happening this week, so we can expect that in the coming days. And another interesting tidbit is that Bournemouth are reportedly keeping an eye on the situation. Justin, what's your first reaction to that news?
I guess it's a bit of a surprise, but not quite a surprise. I guess there's been murmurs pretty much since the end of the season that Scott Parker, I think, firstly, has been linked heavily with Bournemouth since the playoff season. The season ended and the playoffs finished, and obviously the Premier League season finished as well. And there have been a couple of rumours that he's disagreed with the board. So yeah, it's a surprise that it's coming, but it's also not a surprise that it's coming, mainly because of those rumours, and it's all seemed to have come to a head now. But I just think the timing's a bit strange. I think it should have been done a couple of weeks ago, or these discussions had a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Because it has been, taking so long for this situation to be resolved, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe it has been sorted out behind the scenes and they're just going to get on with it. But it seems like that's not been the case after all. And here we are now where we've got Fulham, who won't have a manager in the near future. And there's not long now until the season gets underway again. Players are going to be back in pre-season training in, what, 3 or 4 weeks' time?
Was it two or 3 weeks? I think start of July, so not far at all.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And then we'll get on to Bournemouth in just a sec, but that's also interesting in itself. Scott Parker leaving. I've still got mixed feelings about Scott Parker. I'm not completely sold on him as a manager still. Yeah, when he was in the Championship, the football was slow, dull, not very effective.
Yeah.
And I was more impressed with Scott Parker as a manager when Fulham were in the Premier League, which is a bit of a weird thing to kind of say, really. Because I think he managed to adapt the style of play and play a bit more of a free-flowing style of play. And despite Fulham not having much chance to prepare for the Premier League season as you would do in normal seasons, he did all right, didn't he? Considering they were looking like they were down and out for quite some time, and then they managed to build up, and at one point looked like they were having a decent chance of staying up. But ultimately, it didn't happen in the end, which is a bit of a contrast to how they did in the Championship the season before, where they had this really talented squad and managed to get up eventually through the playoffs. So I'll just sign off on this point by saying I'm going to be interested to see who Fulham get in, but with Scott Parker in charge, I wasn't too convinced about them bouncing straight back up into the Premier League with Scott Parker. I don't think he's a bad manager. I'm just not completely sold on him as a whole.
Yeah, I understand the point completely, because that squad he had at Fulham in the Championship season when they went up through the playoffs was, as you say, talented. But I think it was talent based on names. There wasn't a lot of recruitment to fit the system. I don't think Scott Parker really got to grips with the system until 6 games until the end of the season, where I think he switched it to a 4-2-3-1, and then became a different beast. And that filtered into the Premier League, where again it's a bit of a slow start, and then he started to come into their own. But again, at Fulham, it's a little bit of a mini rebuild. You've got players like Loftus-Cheek, Areola, Anderson, Ayana Lookman, Josh Maja. They're all going back to their parent clubs. So whoever's going to come into Fulham, they've got a big job on their hands in getting this squad ready for a Premier League push again.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be very interesting to see who they're going to get in, because I'm not entirely sure who they'll get in off the top of my head. It's going to have to be someone who's a good manager.
Yeah, that's a given.
That is a given. It kind of goes without saying. But at the same time, the Fulham ownership, they're fully expecting promotion first time round, aren't they? And I don't think their managerial decisions, their managerial appointments in recent years have been particularly clever.
I go back to there was Martin Jol, who was a good appointment after Mark Hughes. I can't remember if it was under the current ownership though. So Fulham fans, please let us know. But then he went to Felix Magath, which was a disaster, and then it was Kit. Is it Kit Simons?
Kit Simons, yeah.
Which was a bit of a strange one. And then there was, and then obviously there's Jukanovic and Ranieri, which again is a bit of a strange one. So yeah, a sketch had passed with coaching or managerial decisions, but you'd hope they learn from it by now, because this is it's going to be a massive appointment. Because as we said, there's a little bit of a rebuild needed at Fulham, because I don't think with the players that they've got, promotion is a guarantee. No, I don't think it is at all.
No, there's definitely very talented managers out there available, aren't there? We think of Chris Wilder, for example, who looked like he was going to get the West Brom job, but that's not happening anymore. Off the top of my head, Alex Neil's a capable manager at this level. There's talent out there. There are gaffers out there who are ready to take on this job and try to work their magic. It's definitely a squad capable of finishing at least in the playoffs. It's just whether they can get that appointment right, because the right appointment could take them a step further. Bournemouth then. Scott Parker to Bournemouth. Interesting one. Bournemouth seem to have had their ear to the ground in some way, because they've not rushed to appoint Jonathan Woodgate yet. They haven't really given us any indication at all of who's going to be in charge next season. But with this, it sounds like they knew Scott Parker wasn't 100% going to be the Fulham manager next season. And now it looks like they're ready to swoop in and get their man.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because they've been linked with him literally all summer. I say all summer; it's only been about 4 weeks, but they've been linked with him for a long time. Even throughout the playoffs, there was murmurs of Scott Parker being on a list of candidates. And at that point, I was like, why would he leave Fulham to go to Bournemouth? I think it's a bigger job at Bournemouth. And considering that there's
just to clarify, you mean bigger job in terms of bigger job to turn things around.
Yeah,
you're not saying,
Well, I'm not getting into that argument.
I'm just saving you from the vultures.
yeah. I'm not saying who's a bigger club in this scenario. Bournemouth is a bigger project.
Yes,
much bigger project. So yeah, it's a bigger task to turn around, because they're going to lose players, we expect, over the summer. But with the system that Woodgate put the foundations in place for, and what Parker has achieved over the last sort of 12 to 13 months, a system that he deployed at Fulham, I think it's the right appointment tactically. He's a young and up and coming coach. He's still learning, so it's the reason why you're not completely sold on him, and that's fair. He's only had 2 years in full time management in clubs, at Fulham, where the expectation is to get promoted, so the pressure is there. But I think he has wised up a lot over the last sort of 12 months. I remember going back to they beat Liverpool at Anfield 1-0, and there was a speech about, or there was a clip of him sort of talking about what he said to the players about being up to the task, etc. It's a really interesting one. It wasn't about sitting back; it was about getting in their faces. That's a really dumbed down version, by the way. He didn't say that word for word, but it goes to show that there is an intelligent coach in there that knows a lot more than probably what we have given him credit for. So I think it would be a smart appointment for Bournemouth. It's just we don't know who's going to be there playing wise at the end of this. Well, at the start of the preseason.
Yeah, I agree. As I say, I'm not sold on Scott Parker, but I'm not denying that he has got the potential to be a very good manager. It's just in these first couple of seasons, he's been dealt a weird hand in the way that he's had high expectations in the two jobs, in the 2 years that he's had as a manager so far. And whether he's actually matched those expectations is another story for another day. But in terms of Bournemouth, it makes sense for them because style of play, as you say, makes sense. And he comes across very well in the media as well. He's a young manager. He matches the Bournemouth brand. It does make sense from a Bournemouth perspective. And it seems like it was either them or Jonathan Woodgate. And we've criticised Jonathan Woodgate plenty of times on this show, so we'll go no further there. So yeah, it makes sense for me. him going to Bournemouth. Does it make me think that they're more likely to get promoted next season? I guess. I'm just still not convinced on the whole idea. But yeah, this whole episode as a whole, where Scott Parker's moving on from Fulham to Bournemouth, I'm interested to see how it pans out for all parties involved, if it does indeed end in him going to Bournemouth, because he also has been linked with other jobs as well, hasn't he? I think he was being linked with the Spurs job very early in the summer, but obviously that's been sorted out now. So, any other thoughts, Justin, on this idea?
No, as you say, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. It's a bit of a managerial merry-go-round at Championship level. There doesn't seem to be any decision-making at top level. Bournemouth have waited a while. West Brom have cocked things up massively to the extent where someone's left the club in Luke Dowling. So yeah, I think for the so-called smaller clubs, the clubs without parachute payments, this is a really good opportunity for them, because this indecision with these well-financed clubs and clubs with inflated wage squads, shall we say, it's a good opportunity to trump them. It's going to be a very competitive season, and the way it's panning out now, very, very excited.
Well, that's a good point. All 3 relegated clubs have changed manager this summer. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. But there you go. We'll have to check back with you, ladies and gentlemen, very soon for more reaction to any other Championship news over the summer. We'll be here with you on YouTube. Of course, we're not doing podcasts at the moment, but we'll be back very soon on that front as well. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
Thank you for watching.